The prosecutor for the International Criminal Court says an investigation will be launched into war crimes allegedly committed by NATO in Libya. Alliance members will be investigated alongside former rebels and Gaddafi loyalists. For more on this, I'm joined live from London by Jeremy Corbyn. He's Labour MP and member of the Stop the War coalition. Well, the ICC didn't care when NATO forces bombed countries like Iraq or the former Yugoslavia, causing heavy civilian casualties. So what do you think has changed now?
I think the controversy around the bombing of Libya in the first place, the fact that it's been under forensic media examination ever since it began, and the very credible reports from Amnesty and other human rights groups such as Human Rights Watch about abuses of civilians by both the Gaddafi forces, the pro-Gaddafi forces, and indeed by the Benghazi-based Transitional National Council, and very, very disturbing reports about the treatment of African mercenaries or African workers who were in Libya at the time of the bombing by the NATO forces. So I think there's going to be some very serious investigations undertaken. Interestingly, Russia demanded that the ICC investigate all aspects of this particular conflict and all allegations.
But NATO would say that simply this is a case of war and accidents do happen. They didn't deliberately target civilians in the way that Gaddafi's troops did.
Well, they no doubt will say that, and no doubt there will be people that defending Colonel Gaddafi that will say the opposite. It's very important there be a thorough investigation into this, and there also be an investigation into the killing of Colonel Gaddafi himself, because this was not meant to be a war for regime change, and it certainly was not intended for the assassination of Gaddafi. I don't know the details of exactly what happened, except he was alive when captured and dead a few minutes later.
What if a case is launched? How far would it really go? Would we actually see individual military officials being put in the dock? Or really shouldn't this be government leaders being put in the dock?
NATO can't put itself on a pedestal and say that it's undertaking humanitarian bombing campaigns, such as they claimed in the case of Libya, if civilian targets were attacked, if non-military targets were attacked, if civilians died, then those are war crimes, and the ICC must investigate. Now then, who decided to bomb which target is usually a military decision rather than a political one. So in the case of Iraq or the case of Israel bombing Gaza, there was a clear line of political command that instructed that things to be done. I suspect that the politicians who decided on the NATO campaign will say it was a military decision taken by commanders on the spot, and I would imagine they would try to shift the responsibility to them rather than take it upon themselves. I don't think they're going to be investigating Sarkozy or Cameron anytime soon.
What about the military? They'll be saying, hey, what about the future? For future campaigns, if we are liable to be prosecuted, this is going to tie our hands, we won't be able to do our job properly.
Well, the bombing campaign that took place in Iraq was directed from outside any ICC country during the time the bombing actually took place. This wasn't. This was directed from a base in Italy and indeed other US or British bases across Europe. And so quite clearly they're within the purview of the ICC. Yes, it will make a difference, but that's the whole point of the Rome Statute. It's the whole point about the International Criminal Court, that it makes the commanders and the politicians absolutely responsible for the decisions they take and for the deaths that follow.
Can I just ask you about the immediate future now for Libya? The NTC, as you were mentioning a little earlier, have been accused of recent atrocities. Isn't that therefore a case that NATO should stay on there in Libya and provide security? After all, its initial mission was to protect civilians.
Its mission was to protect civilians and to prevent any flying by the Libyan Air Force at that time. The mission is over. They allegedly have been withdrawn, but in answer to a parliamentary question, there seems to me to be some obfuscation about what foreign forces and what special forces were in Libya, and indeed probably remain in Libya. The NTC claim that they can now disarm all the rebel groups and they can create a reunified Libyan army. It remains to be seen. I'm very worried that we're going to descend into lawlessness, a civil war, and they're going to find it impossible to collect in the vast quantities of arms that are freely held by people all over Libya at the present time.
Jeremy Corbyn, as always, great to hear what you have to say. Labour MP and member of the Stop the War Coalition, thank you indeed for joining us.